happens, I got to set this up a little bit. She's right there and you can see something there. But what happens when you mix beauty pageants, music, the outdoors, traveling, and advocating for sexual assault awareness and education, plus you add church activities and being involved in multiple school clubs? If you mix it all together, you have our special guest. She's a senior at Liberty. I think I'm going to say this right. ILO, I think it is.
ILO.
High school. ILO. Okay, I was close. In Texarkana, Texas. Kalyx Cantu, welcome to Utalk.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's great. We've been looking forward to this. I appreciate you taking time to be on the show, and you've got your crown, and I think you're wearing your sash as well. We can't quite see your sash, but that's okay.
We're gonna There we go.
All right, there we go. Now we see it. All right. Now, before we jump into our conversation, because we got there's some great stuff to talk about from your background and what you're involved in. But before we do that, I got a totally random question. If you had to have a membership to go to a fast food restaurant and you could only choose one, which one would it be?
Probably Chick-fil-A.
Oh, okay. Good choice. Now, why Chick-fil-A? Is that just like a fave of yours, or?
I like salad, but I don't like lettuce, and they have a kale salad. And so, that I like. I have mac and cheese, and their mac and cheese is so good.
Oh, I haven't had their mac and cheese. They're one of my favorite restaurants. I mean, the service is good. The food is really good. I like their lemonade because it's just like totally refreshing. So I'm going to have to, I haven't tried their kale salad and I haven't tried their mac and cheese. And you know what? This conversation is making me hungry because I haven't eaten dinner yet. But good choice. I'll keep that in mind. If I ever run into some big shot at Chick-fil-A, I'll say, hey, we have this friend and she picked you above all other fast food. What can you do to help her out? Okay, you currently hold the title of Miss Northeast Texas Outstanding Teen.
Yes.
How did you get this title?
So it was actually the first ever local pageant that I competed in. I competed last February, and there's 4 stages of competition. So the first thing we do is we go through I think it's an 8-minute interview with a panel of judges. They ask us different questions about our platforms, our lives, our school, like things we do in school, our volunteer opportunities, all of that. We also compete in lifestyle and fitness, and then we compete in talent. And there are so many different kinds of talents that girls do. They do speed painting and roller skating and dance.
Whoa.
All kinds of really interesting things. I just sing, so I think
I just sing.
I played ukulele and sang when I won this title. And then the last stage of competition is on-stage question, and that's what everybody sees as your pageant event because it's the big, pretty gowns, and that's when we go out and they ask us. We really have to think on our feet because we're in front of the whole audience, and it was
now ukulele. That's not like an everyday instrument. I mean, normally it's like keys or guitar. You know, in my case, it's drums, but that you can't really sing with drums or anything. So. But you broke up. What was that?
I play quite a few instruments now. Ukulele is one of 6, 7.
Whoa!
6 or 7.
All right, give us a list.
I play ukulele, a little bit of guitar, some piano, flute, piccolo, saxophone, and I can play at least one song in all of those things.
Whoa,
and
that's amazing.
Everyone tells me the spoons doesn't count, but I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. I mean, I tried to play piano when my parents gave me piano lessons when I was younger, and I think I had the worst teacher on the planet. She was older than dirt, you know, and she was like this little spindly lady, and she had this big bag, and she had this ruler that was like 18 inches long with a metal edge on it, and if I didn't do my fingers the right way, she would whack my knuckles. And it's like, you know, no bueno, I'm out of here, man. I don't want to do that. So I eventually ended up to the drums. All right, well, what made you, I mean, first of all, I admire the fact that you can play at least one song on all those instruments. And I can't imagine going through all those questions in kind of the interview process. And, you know, that's a lot to go through. But I mean, did you just wake up one morning and say, you know, I think I want to get into a beauty pageant? Or what was the motivation?
So there are a couple things that played into it. One, for the longest, I didn't know that there was one in my city. Um,
Okay.
that I kind of was acquaintances with won a title, and I was like, "Whoa, I didn't even know that was a thing." And then I
Huh.
looked into it, and the Miss America organization provides more scholarships than anyone else to women in America. And
Hmm.
so I'm going into nonprofit work as an adult, and
Okay.
nonprofits do not pay back student loans.
No, they don't.
I really love those scholarships. But the main reason I decided to compete is because of what we call the Social Impact Initiative. And so every candidate has just kind of any cause that is important to them that they raise awareness for throughout their year. And
Hmm.
I had something that really laid close to my heart and that I wanted to talk about and advocate for. And that gave me a bigger platform than I could have got anywhere else. And so I've been able to stand on the Miss Texas stage in front of hundreds of people and talk about it. And it's an opportunity I never would have gotten otherwise.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. And we're going to talk about your advocacy work and your organization, uh, because I think it's super important. I mean, it's something that we need to have more discussion about. But I mean, to put yourself out like that. In fact, I was looking at our reel that was put together for you
Mhm.
for the show,
I
and the gowns and our intern did that. Angela did that, and I thought, she's new with us with Utalk, so um, I thought she did a great job. But seeing the car and the gowns and actually, I wish she could have been here on the show. But one of our co-hosts, Katie Ann, was in the beauty pageant world as well for I want to say 5-6 years, something like that, and just competed. She won, I don't know how many national titles. It was a different kind of pageant. It was, I mean, I guess there's like a food chain of pageants or
Yeah,
something, and a Miss America,
there's
different ones. And,
big one,
and
America and Miss USA, and they both have different criteria, different types,
okay.
but we all love each other so much. Even girls that only compete in locals and they don't do systems,
Uh-huh.
love my sisters.
Well, it really is a sisterhood. I mean, in talking to her and all the stuff that you have to prepare and you go through. And now, do you have like any kind of volunteer work you have to do, like so many hours per month or per year or whatever with your title?
We don't have a specific number of hours that are required, but
Hmm.
Act Initiative is such an important part that's one of the main things you're asked about in your interview. A lot of locals use that as your onstage question, and you have to
Okay.
know about it and have a lot of work with it to be able to represent it well. And
Uh-huh.
so they really just encourage you to do any volunteer work, whether it's with your social impact initiative or not. But I think it definitely makes you a better candidate because they can see how active you are in your community. They can see how ready you are and willing you are to do
Okay.
things.
Now, do they, is there an expectation of, because I'm sitting here comparing this to Katie, and thinking of things she did, and she did like volunteer work. I don't know if they had so many hours, but I think so, but you were supposed to do, this volunteer work. So she did a lot of different things, including, like a food center where people could come that were less fortunate and get food. She made appearances at like, car rallies. And I think she was in a parade locally one time, or actually a couple times. So do you,
Are most girls' favorite part of like having your job. We call it a job because it's very time consuming. We're
oh
obviously
yeah.
paid in scholarships, but we spend a lot of time working with our titles. And so I've been able to go to, I was in a parade last week, our homecoming parade.
Oh,
I
nice.
My favorite thing that I've done was actually our soup kitchen downtown. Is
Mm.
Hannah and me and one of my sister queens, Lizzie, Miss Texarkana, we were asked to come and serve, and we had so much fun. I absolutely loved it. I love getting to know the people and the
Mm.
that worked in the kitchen, and they spent hours making all this food. And all of the people that came in that were getting food were so sweet and so
Mm.
just grateful for everything that we did for them. And it was so nice just to be able to do something for the community. But I love service. I've been volunteering for as long as I could remember. So this was just
It sounds like you've got a great heart, I mean, that, because what you just said, there's so many people that are hurting and so many people that need help. Up until COVID, we used to do a yearly outreach for homeless teens in Hollywood. And I always loved that event, because they could come and get a haircut, they could get their nails done, get a snack, shoot hoops. We had all kinds of resource people there for them. We had a program, and then when they left, they had a big meal too as well. And we invited celeb friends to come in, and some people from the beauty pageant world, if I can say it that way, from the sisterhood, I guess. And it was just, you see them and you say, this is something that they haven't experienced and they may not experience. And I remember one year we had this couple, and he was like, he played Batman. He was like the cosplay, super level Batman guy. And his wife was actually Wonder Woman, and she was the Wonder Woman for DC comics and all. And when Gal Gadot, I think is her name, the actress that played the part in the movie, when she wasn't there, then Jessica was there. But they called us in advance a couple of days, and they said, hey, we would really like to do something else during the meal. And I said, what's that? And they said, take pictures, with the teens that are there. So they stood there for a couple hours, and we had a local camera place donate like new Polaroid type cameras where these teens could get a picture taken and leave with it. So, I admire you guys when you do that. I mean, it's just when you're serving somebody less fortunate, kind of changes perspective, doesn't it?
It really does. And I feel like it feeds a lot back into the sisterhood because all of us have such different social impact initiatives that we kind of
Mm-hmm.
there's a drive to do something more. And so one night we have what's called our spring seminar, and all the teens and the misses meet up before state week just to kind of figure out how state week is going to go. And we
Mm-hmm.
were sitting there, we had a little PJ party, and we were all discussing our social impact initiatives and telling each other what it was that got us involved. And it's really nice to realize how many teens out there are so willing to do something in their community. Actually, the girl I was talking about earlier, that one
Uh-huh.
that I was like, oh, she did that, I want to do that. She's watching right now. Colin. I love my girl. I texted right before this. I was like, guys, we're about to go live if you want to watch.
That's cool. I love the sisterhood thing. We
Oh,
got a brotherhood thing. We got a bro-man thing, but we don't have the sister. But that's awesome. And to have the social, I keep going over that in my mind as you keep saying that, the social impact emphasis, and each one of you doing that. I mean, what an amazing impact you're having then if all of you were doing that. And I take it that everything is pretty much different. Is that correct?
for the most part, there's a few that'll overlap because a lot of
Mm-hmm.
girls have extremely similar stories, and so they choose something that
Mm.
they're dealing with personally. We have a couple girls that were diagnosed with dyslexia at a young age, and so they go into schools and they speak to other dyslexic students, and they're all in different areas of Texas. And since Texas is so big, they're not overlapping at all. But state, we really bond over that experience together, and it's really neat.
That's very cool. I mean, it's encouraging because I know there are people in our world that like to trash talk younger people, and they're lazy, they're this, they're that. I want to slap them upside the head sometimes, and say, you don't know who I know. You haven't interacted with the people I've interacted, and it's such an encouragement to hear about that kind of commitment. We're really big at Utalk. You and I haven't talked about this, but one of the things we really like to talk about is, are you mad? Are you making a difference? What are you doing to change the world? And you guys are doing things to change the world.
And some of these girls do some crazy, crazy things. Like they're doing all kinds of really big events that you see adults being afraid to put themselves in that spotlight. But these
Hmm.
13, 15-year-old girls, I didn't get involved until I was 16 years old. But some of our youngest, we have Claire and Zoe, and they're 14 and they're little babies and they're jumping out.
That
Just
is so cool, because
so
it's,
they're so much better than I'll ever be.
oh, I don't know about that. But no, that's so cool because starting at a young age, but really starting at any age, to go out and change the world. Let's face it, our world needs changing, and I think the best people to do it are younger people, young adults. That's why we have Utalk. Utalk is all about young adults. And if you look historically, it's young adults that have changed the world over and over and over again, throughout history. So, yeah, I mean, that's exciting to hear that and see that. Well, I'd like to sit in a room with you and a bunch of them and just listen to what everybody's saying and what they're doing. I mean, that what a kind of an emotional high that might be, walking out just going, ha, you guys, all these people are doing this. That's amazing. Now you experienced something pretty horrific, horrible in your life that no one should ever have to go through. And I know you don't like to talk about all the details, which we don't need to get into the details. But in brief, tell us what happened, Kalyx.
So a little bit of my story, I've been sharing a lot lately. Actually, I talked about it at church last night, and so I'm really glad to do so. But one of my close family members growing up, I was molested from the time I was 7 until I was 11 years old. And I was so afraid of all the consequences and the anger and the blame that came with that. So I didn't tell anyone all through my entire childhood until going into my freshman year of high school. And it really ruined my freshman and sophomore year for me because I was having to deal with court and therapy and meeting with attorneys and things that children should never have to face.
Never.
I just go alone at that point. And so once I was able to share my story and people started reacting to it, and they would tell me their stories and they had never spoken about it. And it had been years since anything had happened to them. But hearing someone else admit that they weren't alone, made them feel be able to talk about it. And so I was able to talk to so many people. A lot of those people have put their abusers in prison now, the same thing that I was able to do. And so just share my story and see other people not only react to it, but be able to share theirs because of it has completely changed my life.
I cannot even imagine. It makes me angry. Okay. It really makes me angry. And I think back to, I was invited to speak at a state prison, which will go unnamed. And the chaplain's walking around pointing out different sections we were going to go into. And he pointed at this one and he said, tomorrow you'll be there. He said, that's the SO section. I said, SO? He goes, sexual offenders. And I said, Rich, I don't think I can do that. I just don't think I can do that. I said, it just boils my Italian blood. It just, and he said, but Steve, they need help.
It is. And it's a known thing, especially in prisons. The reason they separate them out is because other prisoners, people who have murdered people, they're in there for drugs and all these things. They know how heinous those crimes are. And so they work together to keep them from being beaten or killed by the other prisoners because of the anger that comes with that, because they know that nobody deserved that.
No, it's mind-boggling, for me to, as I was reading over and preparing, for our conversation, I just kept shaking my head, thinking this is it's heinous. Now go back for just a minute. Okay, 7 to 11, but you didn't, if I heard you correctly, you didn't really tell anybody until you were a freshman in high school.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Why then? Or what, was there something that enable that?
So the main reasoning was because I had small cousins that were regularly being around my abuser, and they were reaching the age that I was when it started happening. And then I tell you, it was by the hand of God. I found this book. It was given to me at a Comic-Con, and it was called I Have the Right to. It's sitting on my bookshelf. I can see it right now. But it was a memoir that a high school student wrote after she was assaulted on her campus, and the backlash and the hatred that she got from family members and friends and the public for trying to bring light to that event and the way that it affected her life. And I was just reading through it, and I was sitting in math class one day, and I got to this page, and she said, it's not that I'm a victim, it's that I'm a survivor, and I'm not going to let that. And I was like, that was so big to me. And so I didn't even finish reading it then. I just put it in my backpack, and I went home, and I wrote out a note, because for the longest, I could not make the words come out of my mouth. It was a really hard. So I wrote it on a note, and I left it for my stepmom. And then that was the beginning of all of it for me.
Well, I'm sad that you had to go through this, but I know that you're being used probably more than you realize to
I
help
was,
other people get help.
I was sharing my testimony last night at church, and we've been talking a lot recently about how a lot of people that aren't Christians think that because you're a Christian, it means your life is supposed to be perfect. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was telling them, I was like, it's not about that, because God didn't give me the pain. God gave me the ability to use it to do something with it. And
Oh, oh,
to take the things that I can't change, I can't undo it. And
no.
the thing I can do is talk about it more, because the more you talk about it, the more people you can help. And so just taking the opportunity to constantly, bring it back up, because if we don't talk about it, it's like if you never tell anyone that their store's being robbed, they're not going to put cameras up. No one's going to know.
Oh, no, exactly.
Out, tell people what to look for, and explain how prevalent it is. Because I
Mm-hmm.
don't think people realize how often it happens in the United States and all over the
Yeah, I was
world.
gonna. That's my next question. How big is this thing across the U.S.?
A American is raped every 68 seconds.
Oh,
It's
oh,
extremely common in men and women both, and it's 1 in 6 women and 1 in 8. So I don't think a lot of people just think that they're alone. They're like, oh, that never happens to anyone. Everyone,
yeah.
it's never me, never my family, never my friends. But really, in a classroom of 30 kids, 5 of those kids have been sexually assaulted.
And I think a lot of people don't realize that guys are sexually assaulted. It's not just a girl female thing. It's happening to guys as well. You said 1 in 5 girls and 1 in 8 guys. Did I hear that right? Ooh, that's huge. That's absolutely huge. Whew. I mean, now I know part of your advocacy is, education as well. You want to better. Yeah, I mean, how do we? I mean, it sounds kind of weird, but how do we
Yeah.
educate people about this?
So I have a couple different things that I really push for. One is I call them my consent books, because it's the easiest way to explain it, to
Okay.
elementary. So I have this book. It's called Don't Hug Doug. And it's talking about Doug just doesn't like to be hugged. He prefers high fives. And he gets really frustrated when people try to touch him if he doesn't like it. And that's why it's so important to ask people's permission to touch them. And when you teach a 4-year-old about bodily autonomy, and they realize that you can't touch me unless I tell you can, then
Mm-hmm.
no gate for them as a growing up child, teenager, and adult, because they establish that responsibility and ability to protect themselves and their own body from a very young age. And so that
Yes.
I personally push for comprehensive sex education in all 50 states, because comprehensive sex education includes healthy relationships and
Mm.
dating violence and those things that lead to abusers. Because when you're in unhealthy relationships at 14 years old and you don't understand the difference between getting gifts and being groomed, those are the things that are going to keep you protected as you're growing up.
Those are powerful words. They really are. And I mean, I'm sitting here thinking, I'm processing all this and going back to when you saw your younger cousins,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like God put that on your heart and you decided you wanted to do something about it. And isn't that part of the education process too, in saying, you know, do something. Don't just say, hey, we ought to do something. Somebody should do something. Somebody needs to pass a law. You
We're
know, yeah, you broke up. What did you say? Say that
but
again.
you can't just tell everyone else to do it. Somebody has to take that initiative and say it's going to be me. Because if
Yes.
you just keep putting it off to the next person, and then years go by and nothing has changed.
And that isn't easy. It had to be when you left that note for your stepmom, and like you said, trying to get the words to come out. And I imagine part of that process was not necessarily reliving, but thinking back to what you experienced and having to somehow articulate that.
It's definitely been a really weird thing. Actually, the first sentence of it said, "I don't want to talk about it. Please leave me alone." Run through this, let you know, because like they're still in contact with him, that somebody should do something. Um, so it was very, I'm not going to be involved in this, but obviously
Mm-hmm.
that did not pan out, because here I am 2 years later, 3 years later. But I, obviously, when you go through a trauma like that, you end up with PTSD, and
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely a weird experience when it comes to reliving it, because I think while I'm doing so much to educate others and to make the situation better, the more
Mm-hmm.
just kind of the more I can remember, because memory loss is a really big deal in PTSD. And
Mm.
I a lot of my childhood that I kind of just suppressed, even things that were not centered around my abuse, because so much was going on during that time that I suppressed
Mm-hmm.
all of it. And so there's a lot of my childhood that I have absolutely no memory of.
Kalyx, that's awful.
And so, but the older I get, the more those memories kind of just come back, which is kind of
Oh,
nice.
cool. Yeah,
As I
yeah.
talk about my abuse more and be more comfortable with that, it comes back with all of a sudden I remember my like fifth birthday party, which I had absolutely not a drop of memory in there. And
Mm.
it's kind of nice to, I feel like I'm getting my life back all the way from all the,
Oh. I was just thinking about that. I thought what a blessing to be able to get your life back, those years that you lost, and also thriving. And you are, you haven't necessarily said it, but I think people need to grab a hold of this. It's attitude. You adopted an attitude and going back to, you're not going to be a victim.
mm-hmm.
It's I don't know if you know somebody named Cynthia Garrett, but somehow you guys ought to connect. We had her on the show, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years ago. But she goes around the place speaking, and she's an adult, but she had been abused. She had been beaten as a child. She had cancer, and on her dad's deathbed, he said, "Promise me something." He said, "You haven't had it easy." And he went through the list of, kind of the litany of things. And he said, "You have every right to be angry. You have every right to have that kind of an attitude." So he said, "What I want you to do is stomp and shout, take 5 minutes, stomp and shout, kick the walls, hit the walls, do whatever you want to do." And he
Such,
said, "Stop being a victim and be a victor." And
yeah,
that's exactly what you're saying.
for my, everyone has their own outlets. And because I didn't just, because I chose to speak about it and because I chose to make something more of it, I didn't just not have PTSD and anxiety anymore. It didn't just go out the
Mm,
window because I was trying to help other people. And so it's something that still very much affects me to this day. And so
okay.
I turn my radio up all the way, open my windows, and scream every song the whole way home.
I love it. I love it.
It's because I have to remember that, some days it's really hard. Some days I'm like, I cannot do this. And then I'm like,
Hmm.
I already did. So might as well
Yeah.
just keep going.
I love the therapy. Roll the window down and
Yes.
scream loud. I
Some,
kind of do that, but I also have one hand hitting the dashboard like a drum. So,
and my window's broken. So like it doesn't roll all the way back up. I have to like yank it back up. And so well, it's going to fix in a minute, but it is so worth it.
it's, I am so encouraged by, I don't want to say excited, I know that's the right word, but encouraged by what you're doing and the attitude you have adopted. And this whole thing of, I'm not going to be a victim, and wanting to help other people, which I'm assuming is, you started an organization called Stronger Than Silence.
Stronger than this
Um,
it last year.
Stronger Than the Silence. Yes. What was a motivation to say, hey, I want to help somebody, or I mean, multiple things of motivation?
So I decided that that was going to be obviously my social impact initiative.
Yeah.
And you can compete as a teen until you're 18, and you can compete as a miss until you're 27. I'm not sure, but at some point there's a,
Okay.
and I knew that this was going to take up more of my life than the Miss Texas organization was going to allow me to compete. And so
Mm.
I didn't know for sure that I wanted to compete as a miss. So I was like, if I have 2 years as a teen, I don't want this to be over when I turn 18 because I'm not done. And so I decided reaching out in more ways. So we're about to start seminars, which I'm so, oh, thank you, Mom. 26 years old. She just commented that. Um,
Thanks,
26.
Mom.
Thanks, Mom. That's right. That's Stronger Than Science right there. So y'all follow her in the comments because that is our organization page. But we just started seminars, or we're about to start seminars, and so we're able to educate daycare workers and parents and people that
Oh.
have children, what to look for in their children to see, signs that their child may be being abused, and also signs of
Hmm.
potential groomers, potential predators, and because you never know really who someone is behind closed doors, and
You know.
my family, that's the case with a lot of families. A lot of the time, it's often really close to the victim's house, and it's usually a relative if it's a younger victim. And so
Oh.
It's, it could be family members, family, friends. You have no idea who they are the second you turn your back. And so just knowing what to look for and things like that.
That's powerful. And I just, again, I'm just trying to process this, thinking, I mean, what would motivate a person to want to do this to a relative or a younger child who
Mm-hmm.
can't defend themselves in a lot of ways? And I mean, it's just unpack the strange. Excuse me, I was thinking of Stranger Things. This is not Stranger Things. Stronger than the silence.
Mm-hmm.
Unpack that a little bit for us.
So the way I always like to explain it is, I kept my silence from the time I was 11 until I was 14 years old. And it really tore me down in a lot of ways. There was times growing up, like in middle school, that I was so angry at the world and depressed, and I could not understand the reason behind all these things. That completely by myself because I had never told anyone because I
Yeah.
kept. And so the day that I decided that I was more than what happened to me, and the day that I decided that I was going to be bigger than that and stronger than the silence, was the day that I got my life back. And so that was my. And so I even tell people, because a lot of, there's people, thankfully, there are people that have not had to deal with this firsthand. And
Yeah.
that, stronger than the silence doesn't only have to do with sexual assault. Stronger than the silence is being more than the things that have happened to you, because you are so much bigger than situations placed in your life.
Yeah.
And the opportunity to do something about it. And so whether it's domestic violence, or you were put in the foster care system, you didn't have a family growing up, or you have a drug addiction, if you continue to deal with that by yourself and refuse to, speak on the things that are happening in your life, then you're down until there's nothing left to tear down. And so choosing to be stronger than the silence is what's going to help you get past that.
Brilliant. I mean, that is so powerful, especially when you start applying it. And I hadn't put the application in to so many different other things that you have. But I mean, it reaches so many people because so many people are struggling. They're not understanding it's okay not to be okay, and they don't know how to process it. And it doesn't do any good to keep it inside, to keep it to yourself. What's your website?
Right now we're on Facebook and Instagram only. We don't have a website launched yet, but it's on both Facebook and Instagram.
Okay, perfect. Well, we'll make sure we put that in the notes for the program, because I want to encourage those of you that are watching the show or listening to the show. Please go check this out. Follow Kalyx on Insta. Follow on Facebook, because we need to encourage her for what she's doing, but also there's a lot of hurting people out there. Advice. What do you say to somebody who is who's been or is being molested, assaulted?
So I think the first thing I would go to is just to remind them that it is their story and there is no wrong or right way to be a survivor. So if talking in the way that I do is not what they're comfortable with, then under no means do they have to do that. They're not responsible for other people's feelings. And it's not my job to be hurt by the way that they heal. And so if they decide that they rather keep it inside, or just go to therapy, or just tell their family, or just tell their friends, and they don't want to bring all that light to it, that's completely okay, because that's their situation and it's their trauma and it's their past. So they get to deal with that however they want to. And I think it gives them their power back, because being assaulted, of your, you are obviously that power is taken away from you. And so letting them know that the situation the way that this is going to be handled is under their control helps them feel supported in a way that they would.
That's such great advice. And I hope if anybody is out there, anybody watching or listening, you're struggling with this, follow Kalyx's advice. I mean, it's so practical. Reach out to us, if you want to.
Personal account, my pageant account, and Stronger Than Sounds are always open. And I regularly encourage people that if you just need someone to talk to, I'm completely here, because I understand. And there's a lot of people that have reached out that you wouldn't expect. You've got these student athletes and these old that have gone through it as a child way years before that I've never spoken of it before. And then they go to me and they message me or they comment on my Facebook posts
Oh,
and they're like,
awesome.
I wish I
All right.
when I was your age. And it's just life changing to see how many people are really coming to terms with their trauma because of me sharing my story.
Oh, that is so awesome. You're not wasting the pain.
When
You're not wasting that horror that you went through.
I told
And
them
that's got to be
sorry,
go,
my
no, go ahead.
pain to power, trauma to testimony, because there's so much more than your hurt. And so those are what I'm kind of about right now.
All right, say that again so everybody, I mean, that's great. So everybody picks up on that.
Pain to power, trauma to testimony.
Mm, mm, mm. You know, I'm just thinking through somebody older who has affirmed what you've done and encouraged and said, I wish I had somebody when I was younger
Mm-hmm.
that like you saying something like this. And I can only see part of the message that's up there, but it's for anyone who wants to share their stories to make a difference.
There's a link on the Miss Northeast Texas OT page, and if you click it, it takes you to a form, and you can basically share your story there. You can leave it anonymously, or you can leave it with your name, and you can also leave your contact information so that if you want to be further involved in more events, or if you just want me to reach out, or if you want to reach out to me, and you're able to leave your entire story there, part of it, or even just advice that you have for someone.
That's great.
And then I put them onto my page and the Stronger Than the Silence page, because the more you hear, the more you realize that you're not alone. And so there's people with other girls in the Miss America system. Those are some stories that are already up now, and just rereading them and processing, like you are not alone when you're reading them, because you're seeing other people are dealing with those same things you've been through.
And that's such a powerful encouragement to know that you're not alone. Mm-hmm. Especially with such a horrific thing that you've been through. Give us again, it's Stronger Than the Silence on Instagram and on Facebook. Give us your social too, like that. You have one for pageant and one personal, correct?
Yeah. So my personal account is this one. It's Kalyx_Elizabeth. And then my platform account is Miss Northeast TXOT.
Okay, excellent. That's please.
All of the Stronger and my pageant account are linked in my personal account.
Okay, perfect. Good. And we'll come back to that before we say goodbye, because I want to make sure that we have, and we will put that in the notes for the show. What do you tell somebody who has not experienced this? They've been, they have not had to go through this, but they have a friend or they have a family member who is or has. How do they help? How do they encourage? How do they make a difference in that person's life?
So while there's no wrong way to heal, there is a very much wrong way to be a friend of someone healing. And I know that's really harsh and judgmental, but as someone who had friends and family members say awful, hurtful things to me about, oh, you're not telling the whole truth, or oh, that didn't happen to you, or oh, you're being dramatic, really tear someone down. And if they're after years coming forward with their story and you're saying, I don't know about that, they might just take it back. And that could ruin everything for them, because you made them feel so unheard that they're afraid. And so you really just need to let them know, like, you can talk about this as much or however, which way you like to. If you want to joke about it because that's how you deal with your trauma, you go right ahead and I will laugh with you. If you want to cry about it, here's my shoulder, you can cry on mine. But you have to be an active listener, and you have to be there just for them to get out whatever it is that they want to get out. And you don't push, because when you beg someone to talk about something they're uncomfortable talking about, they're just going to shut down. So I think it's just really know the person you're being around so that you kind of know the way that they're going through it, and then actively involving yourself in their healing process if it's something that they want. Just giving yourself the opportunity to be there for them.
I appreciate what you just said. To me, that's huge. That is it. I mean, from experience, and active listening, I think is such a big concept. We don't listen to people anymore.
really don't.
We just don't. And I mean, I won't take time to go, but I try different things from time to time when I sense somebody isn't listening, and they'll agree or what. And it's like, Bubba, you didn't even hear what I just said. You didn't listen to me because you wouldn't even say, oh, that's so cool, or, oh man, that's rad, or what? I mean, you wouldn't say that if you had really paid attention. So a key factor here for a friend or family member who knows somebody that is going through this or has been is active listening. And I like what you said too. You can say it any way you want to say it. There's no right or wrong way. You can joke about it. But the key factor for that person who wants to help is to listen.
Because there's so many different ways that people will get it out. They may not talk to you about the actual situation itself, and they may just, I'm emotional, or I'm upset, or I have so much anxiety. And if you just sit there and listen to them talk, that might come out. They may be able to talk to you. Because I personally, for some reason, every person has their different levels of comfortable around the people that they surround themselves with. So some of my friends know a lot more about my trauma than the other ones do. And it's not because I didn't want to tell them or because I don't trust them. It's just because in that moment I was vulnerable and I decided to talk to them about it, and they actively listened, and I was able to cope with that better because I could talk about it.
And that's for the one that was victimized to be able to talk about it and be vulnerable is really big, it seems to me. I mean, that's just really big. You got to have that opportunity. And I know I find, because I speak at events to students and young adults all over the place, and sometimes I'll have somebody come up to me and say something that is so crazy. It's like I'm going, is that even true? But I'll respond as if they're seriously asking me that. But that's almost like the test. It's like, hey, we're going to test this guy.
About, how to be a supportive friend. I tell them, you need to talk to the person going through the issue as if you're listening to an emotional toddler. When they are saying something, even if a toddler, I'm upset because I don't have gum. You never had gum, but if you want to cry about it, you can cry about it. And that is perfectly fine. And I will sit here and listen to you cry if that's what you want to do. Because it's my job to support you. It's not my job to tell you that you're wrong or to try to fix it for you. It's just my job to be there for you. And so I think that's the most important thing that you can do. Because maybe they might not want your advice, especially if it's something you haven't gone through.
Sure.
So, toddler, I'm tired, so I'm going to cry. I'm not going to tell you to go take a nap. I'm going to tell you it's okay. Cry if you want to cry. You can handle it however you want to handle it.
That is so practical. Thank you. I mean, that really is. That's a difference maker, because I mean, I'll often say if somebody's asking me for advice or whatever, I haven't gone through that. Mm-hmm. I can't speak from experience. Tell me how you feel. Affirm the feelings or whatever. Thank you. That is. I hope everybody caught that. Okay, that's watching or listening, because that is such great advice. Give us again. It's Stronger Than the Silence on Instagram and Facebook, and then give us your social again.
Mine is Kalyx_Elizabeth.
Okay.
And then my pageant account is currently Miss Northeast TXOT.
TXOT, outstanding team. Kalyx, I can't thank you enough for taking time. I'm glad this worked out with your schedule and ours to have you on. We've got to have you come on again. Please keep us informed in what you're doing, because this is a topic that we haven't really talked about, especially with somebody who was victimized, who is a victor, who has not conquered it, but risen above it and been able to move on in such a solid way. I'm excited to see how this is going to work itself out. What are your plans after your senior year?
So I'm super excited to graduate because I will be moving to Corpus Christi to attend Texas A&M at Corpus. And I'm
nice.
Master's degree in marine biology.
Oh, wow. That's above my pay grade. So
it's going to be sexual assault awareness and ocean conservation, and I'm going to be doing it for the rest of my life.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, see, we're going to have plenty to talk about in the future. So please make sure you stay in touch with us. Let us know what's happening, and if new things are developing or things that we need to let the audience know about. And we definitely have to have you back on for another conversation, because this has been, it's been heavy. It's been a heavy conversation. You know, it weighs on my heart. It really does, because it just, no one should ever have to go through this. But I am so thankful for you and your attitude and your courage and I mean, we talk, influencer is such a buzzword today, but in our book here at Utalk, you are a huge influencer, and I think it's going to grow with time. So please keep in touch with us, and we will look forward to the next conversation we have.
Thank you so much for having me.